kia ora tātou katoa. In Atlands, we are looking to adopt culturally inclusive practices. So this is the karakia that we have, that we often share in our space with our colleagues at Toiohomai. Me inoi tātou. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, home ye, hu ye, dai ki ye.
Thanks, Ruth, for kicking that off. That was just lovely. It's my very great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Mark Bassett and Kate. I know, Kate Absolum from AUT, and I'll hand over to them, and we will start to think about this very, very timely issue. Thanks, Mark and Kate.
Karen. Thanks, Karen. All right, I'm just going to share my screen and we can get started. All right, you can see that okay? Can you? Great. Okay. So kia ora, everybody. Lovely to see you all here on what is in Auckland a wonderfully sunny, crisp and cold day. It's just delightful here. I'm hoping the weather is as delightful where you are as it is here. But doesn't sound like it is in some places. I might just start off by introducing myself. Kia ora, ko ingarangi te whakapaparanga mai, engari ko tamaki makaurau te whenua tupu, ko mangawhau te kainga, he kai whakahaere rātonga a whina a konga o I AUT, ko Kate Absolum aho. So kia ora, everybody. My name is Kate Absolum. My ancestors, I'm tangata Tiriti. My ancestors come from England, but I live in Mount Eden at the moment, which is a very nice place to live. And I am currently the senior manager of the Learning and Academic Engagement team at AUT. And it's great to be here and to see you all. And this is my colleague Mark Bassett, Dr. Mark Bassett. And today we're going to... That's what everyone calls me. Yes, we call him Dr. Mark. He doesn't answer to anything else. And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about what it means, well, what we're finding it means for learning advisors with the new artificial intelligence tools that are coming out. And we've called it Flying the Plane Whilst Building It, which I think it was something that Professor Rowena Harper used in a presentation a couple of months ago, because it feels a bit like that we're having to kind of invent the wheel a little bit in terms of our practice. So this is kind of the outline for the session today. We thought we'd start off with a bit of whakawhanangatanga from you all, and then we'd just talk you through a little bit of the AUT response in terms of what we've done for staff, and Mark will talk you through what we've done for students. And then we'd like to have a discussion about what the generative artificial intelligence tools might mean for shaping our practice as learning advisors, and I think as liaison librarians, because I think we've got a few people from that area here with us too. So just to start off with, if you wouldn't mind just typing in chat your name, the role, that your job role and the institution that you're from, and also the level of knowledge about using generative artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT. If you could give us a number between 1 and 10, 0 and 10. 0 means I know nothing, and 10 is, yeah, I know everything, and why am I listening to you too? Great, so pop that into chat. And I'll have a sip of tea. Brilliant. I can see we've got lots of people from all over the place, which is wonderful. Lots of open poly, te pukenga, good, and a nice, interesting range too around levels. Starting to see some AI work already. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so that's really interesting. So we've got a sort of an interesting range here from 0 or 0.5 to, I think the highest is about
Sort of 7.
a 7. That's awesome. You may need to hopefully you can help us out a little bit in the discussion at the end, whoever put that 7. Fabulous. All right. Well, thank you very much. Nice to meet you all. Right. So it sounds like people are yeah, getting some issues already. Yeah, and we've seen some issues arising here. So I might move on now and just talk to you a little bit about what we had in place, what we've had already in place before this year, and then talk to you a little bit about how we've been responsive this year. So we've had quite a few things in place already in terms of academic integrity. So we have, and I'm sure most of your institutions have this as well, we had academic integrity modules, and I spent a long time embedding them in core courses across the university. So theoretically, a student starting at AUT will come across these modules and do them at some point in the first semester of their first year. We also run orientation sessions on referencing and integrity, and they're also rolling self-access workshops that people can book themselves into throughout semester. And with this, we've got a short video about how not to get into trouble at university as well, that students can access if they're feeling worried. And then we've worked with OTSA, which is our student association, and they've also got a nice landing page that students can have a look at as well on how to not cheat at university. And the other thing that I spent some time a couple of years ago setting up was a university-wide community of practice around artificial, academic integrity, not artificial intelligence, the other AI. And this is just a space so that people who are interested in academic integrity, so we've got academics and professional staff, we can meet up, we can talk a bit about what the issues that are arising in different faculties, all the exciting new ways people are finding to cheat. And yeah, it's a nice little community that keeps bubbling away. So we had that all in place already, but then at the beginning of the year, in February, when it became fairly evident that artificial intelligence wasn't going to go away, and tools like ChatGPT were getting more and more popular, we were sort of going, goodness me, this is, you know, there's a bit of a paradigm shift here in terms of teaching and learning and actually ability to cheat at all levels of the university. So we decided we needed a bit more of a targeted approach for those sort of specific challenges around generative artificial intelligence. The PVC of Teaching and Learning asked us in Te Matapuna and AltLab, which is where our learning designers and learning technologists sit. They asked us to put together something together by the end of the month. This is the sort of beginning of January, February. And we said, yeah, we can do that, we think, by the end of the month. And then she emailed the next day and said, actually, can you do it by the end of the week? Which was slightly more terrifying, but we got together. So AltLab, the Library and Learning Services, and the Academic Quality Office. And yeah, we worked very, very fast and very, very speedily. And we came up with some ideas for both staff and students. So we worked with the Academic Quality Office and looked at a policy and guideline change around wording in terms of academic integrity policy. And we met with the senior learning designers and put together this kind of what you can see here, which is the repository for staff. So it's a sort of source of all truth So staff can come back here and check what does the university actually say about academic integrity and artificial intelligence. So we worked with these colleagues across the university and we made accessible the following tiles. So the first two there are fairly self-explanatory. There's a policy and there's a list of all the information and education that we offer at AUT. Then the third tile there, which was put together by our colleague, a senior learning designer at Alt Lab, has been particularly helpful for staff. So she wrote quite a long document on some staff guidance on artificial intelligence technologies. And this is just a sort of summary of the key action points there. So the university has decided to kind of leave it up to the academics running the courses. So, and they need to be explicit with their students about how or when they're able to use generative artificial intelligence tools. So Sally put together this really useful guidance document that's been accessed many times. So we've got that there for staff to check, which is great. The other thing is our colleagues, the information literacy specialists, also put together a document around tips for detection of AI use and how to kind of look at a student's work and analyze it in terms of the sort of bibliographic features and the textual features. Yes, if you suspect that there's been some inappropriate use of AI there. So that was written by a couple of people from Te Matapuna, which staff are finding very useful when they mark work. And then we also have a list of FAQs, which are consistently updated from Alt Lab, and they're also running a bunch of joint sessions with us for lecturers on what to do. God, sorry, there's loud.
Close the window.
Do you want to close the window? I hope the noise is all right.
They were not doing that before we started.
But now they've decided it's a good idea to move some bins around. So I hope you can hear us okay. Mark's going to close the window. Cool. So they've run a lot of workshops for staff around how to use or what are some good ways of using artificial intelligence in your assessments for students. And they've been really well received as well. And then, so that's what we prepared. We and our colleagues across the university have prepared for staff to access. And then we also did prepared some things for students. So Mark's just going to take you there now.
Sure. Which one? Guess it's this.
Yeah. You're down there. You might want to just go back. Oh. Second try again, maybe. Yeah.
Seamless, totally seamless.
And if you do that one, and then
That one?
Yeah, and then you can move people over there. Yeah, there we go.
Right. All right. So this is the set of resources that we have basically as a course, which is in our learning management system, Canvas. And students across the university all have access to this. And you have the sort of assignment process, kind of content to do with researching, reading, writing and presenting, editing, and proofreading and so on. And we have the obligatory information about referencing and academic integrity. So this was already a page that we had, and we've basically added content to that, specifically on artificial intelligence. So students would have access via the information on academic integrity. We've tried to be as brief and helpful as we can. So a very brief definition about what we mean by generative artificial intelligence, basically saying the tools are available, and putting the agency more on the students to say, you may decide to use them. If you're going to do that, then perhaps it's prudent to ask yourself some questions. And I think the majority of students probably have a decent idea that certain behaviours are not okay, other ones are fine. But where it might not be that clear is the sort of boundaries between what is an appropriate way of using AI and what is not. And what we've tried to do in the content below here in these tabs is just give them some scenarios. There's 4 different scenarios to help them see where the boundary of appropriacy might fall. So this first one, permitted use of academic, sorry, the other AI, artificial intelligence. So what is permitted in for example, assessment instruction? So we give a little bit of an information there. You know, you may see that your lecturer has approved the use of AI or requires you to use AI in your assignment. And then a scenario. So I'm just going to stop talking for a few seconds so you've got a chance to have a skim read and see what's there. And what you can see basically is there's a scenario in the white area at the top. There are instructions that say you can use you must use AI to generate some descriptions of images, but students are supposed to do their own analysis in order to detect biases, if any, in the AI generated descriptions of the images. And then we have Jeff, who is clearly a beacon of light because he's in the green big tick box. And we've got the somewhat shady Noah, who's in the red cross box. So we're trying to just make it really plain. What's in the green, good. What's in the red, bad. And then essentially we give a little description of what Jeff's done and then why what he's done is okay. And then same for Noah, but why what he's done is not okay. And then we basically move through the sort of steps in the assessment process. So again, you may use AI for when you're researching, or reading. Again, here's a little scenario about what might be a good way to use AI and that wouldn't get you into a sort of integrity issues. And then, yeah, where's the boundary? What's not okay? And so on for when students get to do their writing, perhaps the editing part of the process, and also how you might use AI to help you prepare for exams and tests. So we'll go back to the slides. So I'm going to stop sharing. Wait. Cool. So yeah, basically that's the resource, and of course, as we know from the it's probably 1990 classic movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Actually, not in the case of learning resources for students at tertiary institutions, but so yeah, in order to bring the students to that information, or at least let them know that it's there, we've had this promotional campaign spearheaded by our really fabulous communications specialist, And she's partnered with the student union at AUT to get a media campaign. We've got posters, we've got magazine snippets, we've got all of the online spaces that can be used, just to bring to students' attention that there's, we're aware of this just like you are, and if you've got things you're not sure about, what can you do? And we're not, the onus really being on not making it seem like we assume that students will do things wrong. It's more just letting them know that they can check, or that we understand the sort of confusion that may arise.
Yeah, and then it's okay to ask questions.
So that is kind of bringing us to the end of what we wanted to actually share with you. And what would be really good is to spend the rest of our time doing the chatty bit of the Chatland session. So yeah, basically questions we've got at this stage is, how might AI, and it's the artificial intelligence AI, not
the academic integrity AI.
How might AI shape our practice? And also what questions or observations do you have at this stage? How do we want to run this? Do we want people to put their hand up and speak? I think that's the best way.
The best. Or you could, so maybe if you can see on Teams, you can raise your hand, or you can put something in the chat. Dawn said she likes the approach. Thank you, Dawn. I think that reactiveness around using AI is just going to shoot us in the foot. I agree. It's here. We need to move forward. We need to work out how we need, how we can work with it. It can cut down lots of time, but you've got to just make sure that the learning's still happening. I think definitely room for nuance.
Well, we need to set students up for what the world is actually like.
Yeah, that's right. Rather than
pretending it's not there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone's got that.
Oh, Julie, would you like to have a chat?
Sure. Yeah, and I would put my camera on, but my computer doesn't want Teams to turn on the camera. I don't know why, but anyway. I find so far that part of the challenge is us being at some distance to what individual lecturers are doing. Like, we don't know if they're actually wanting students to actively use it. And I know of a few who are, but I don't actually have a good sense across the campus. And it came up for me. So that seems to me an issue for us. But also it came to my attention recently. I was teaching proofreading, and the student said, well, I've used ChatGPT and then I put it through Grammarly, and is that okay? And I don't know, because I don't know. I mean, that's sort of up to the academics, yeah? So I think our distance from those, when it is left to the academics, because I think that's the general approach at this stage at the University of Canterbury as well, as it should be. I mean, they need to set their assessment, but it just makes our position a little bit unclear at times, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think we are kind of navigating a tricky space, right? I think in the first instance, I think you're right. It needs to come from the academic, needs to come from the lecturer. They need to really be explicit with their students about how their students can use the tools, what's acceptable and what's not. And if they're not, I don't think that's fair. It's not fair for us, and it's definitely not fair for the student, right? And we're in the same situation here, and I think that message is slowly trickling out. One of the plans for going forward is to add to that kind of staff repository is some hopefully some case studies of academics across all of the different faculties who've used ChatGPT, and talking about how they do it and the challenges that they've found and the good things that they've found as well from using it. So the plan is to get some of that up for next semester if we've got time. So people have got some other ideas to refer to.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to take some time to socialize it across the academic staff, so there's a little bit more kind of understanding and clarity about what's happening, which then will trickle down to us. But anyway, thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no worries.
Julie. Yeah, so we've got other hands up. Next on our list is Dawn.
So I just wanted to share a couple of examples of where I've sort of seen or heard of AI being problematic in assessments. So one of them was a group of students in construction who had used AI to generate an assignment, and because they were internationals, they were given an opportunity to redo and resit. I was working with one of those students, and we got to the reference list, and it wasn't an APA format, which it needed to be. And so I started discussing that with them, style issues. Then I said, oh, look, the date of publication and the publisher are missing. So let's go away and find them. Went to look up these books to find the date and publisher, and Google could not find them. They didn't exist in the library. And they looked so incredibly plausible because the titles looked like the kind of titles you'd have in a book on that topic. And even the authors were commentators who I'm familiar with their names, and they would indeed write on these kinds of issues. And so I was like, oh, okay. And the students sort of said, oh, you know, I got these off my sister. And I was like, so yeah, so it can generate, you know, it looks like a reference with some missing info, but actually that source does not exist anywhere in the world, which was a bit of a red flag. The other one was a little bit interesting. There were a few nursing students who were picked up by Turnitin as having a high AI similarity, or whatever Turnitin calls it. And they were brought in for interviews, and two of them, you know, the work was kind of not on topic, and so it obviously wasn't relevant. But the other student insisted that it was her own work, but she was a second language user, and she had relied heavily on Grammarly to fix her sentence structure and grammar. And I think that because Grammarly, you know, is kind of, it's just a computer generating things, the patterns that Grammarly had suggested for her were picked up by the Turnitin filter as being AI generated. And so we wouldn't want to discourage them from using Grammarly, like as you say, using tools to proofread and fix grammar and spelling and those kinds of issues. But this student had kind of pretty much accepted everything Grammarly said, which was quite a lot because she had some L1 interference, and the AI filter had highlighted that. So you know, that was considered an acceptable answer and fine. But it was just interesting in our learning about how these tools are working. And, you know, Turnitin is always a blunt stick, and it's catching too much, I think, at the moment. Yeah.
We've actually not used the AI detection
Yeah,
part of it.
Yeah.
The university just took a position on it at AUT and said it's not clear how it works, or whether it works very well. Yeah, so we've just sort of banned it.
Yeah, which is interesting. And I think it's sort of taken away a bit of a safety net that many academics were hoping to have. But yeah, we couldn't test it beforehand, so, and it sort of isn't clear. So
there was that horrible example from a school where two really high achieving students.
Oh yeah, that was in the paper the other day. Yeah,
you know, that was from their point of view really not the case that they'd used any AI. And yeah, it seemed like the tool was the sort of issue. That the school had basically based their decision on that report rather than using it as a set of information that you might have available to you about that student's work.
Yeah, so there's definitely tensions there, right? I think also it comes down to, you know, with that second language learning, is it part of the objective to have that grasp of the language? Does that, I mean, those are sort of questions that the academic needs to be wrestling with a bit there too. Thank you, Dawn. No,
the other thing that was funny was that student said she'd worked with me, and I'm like, I wonder if the language that I generate sounds like AI. Like, is that a problem?
Well, AI does tend to sound quite nice and friendly, doesn't it?
Yes.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
The next person's hand up is it Angie McLean? McLean or Ange McLean? Apologies if I'm not pronouncing your name right.
Going to go to Te Whānau, and here from NMIT and Sunny Nelson. We're actually finding this a really good opportunity to sort of co-construct guidelines and practice with our students. It's really nice to we're working closely with our student association and class reps, and also sort of pinpointing some AI champions amongst both our staff and our students to kind of really help come to a shared understanding around what this AI is and how we can all use it to benefit, and the things that, you know, how to use it ethically and what that means. And that's a bit of a moving feast. But we're finding it a really nice opportunity from an institution-wide approach to kind of share the way forward with the people who are, rather than it being sort of a top-down, something that's imposed on our students, that we develop the guidelines with them and give it a try and see how those go. So in our next staff engagement day, one of the sessions will be on using AI, and we've got a staff member and a couple of high users of AI who are students who can sort of show staff, this is how I use it, this is what I do with it, here's my thinking around when I'm working with it. So yeah, really useful, positive way forward for us here at NMIT.
That sounds fantastic. And I think you're absolutely right that whole co-creation or students as partners, we need to make sure that we're getting student voice into what decisions are being made, because yeah, it's a well-being issue for them, really.
So there does seem to be an unfortunate assumption from some of our staff that students are just out to find any way they can to not do things properly, and yeah, it's quite damaging, actually.
Yeah, and not necessarily, and not true, really.
Yes,
I think it's everyone's sort of we're all trying to find the right direction. It's interesting. Thank you, Ange. That was really interesting to hear. Yeah, sounds really great. There's a couple more hands up. Stephanie, I don't know how to pronounce your family name. Hoot.
Thank you. It's Stephanie Hout. Open Tech. Kia ora koutou. I was really impressed just what you've done. It looks amazing, what you've done at AUT and just the information you've got out there. I've been part of conversations around sort of what the approach should be for both communicating to staff and students. So I was furiously taking notes when you showed those slides. So thank you for that. I'm just curious as to how difficult or not it was getting consensus on the approach to take. I know I've heard sort of, witness sort of people voicing their concerns in different ways, and sort of there has been the attitude of, if we tell people how to use it, then we're condoning it, kind of thing. So there's sort of been a tougher, line on it from some people. Did you experience any of that?
So good question. I think we were so frantically getting things out. I think there was a real development of thinking. Like, I think initially it was like ban everything. Yeah, back to pen and paper. But the more we kind of talked it out, that just it's just you can't go that way, really. So I mean, essentially the university said it's up to you how you run your paper, how you run your course, but you need to be explicit with your students about how and why. So I think that sort of left everybody with a little bit more room to move, and it may of course change in the future too, but that's the position that they're taking now. Have you got anything to add to that? No?
Sure. I think we were in a somewhat enviable position because I guess it was the Academic Quality Office and the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Learning and Teaching wanted the university to come up with staff and student educational material, essentially. And I think we were kind of, between us and the Learning and Teaching department, given somewhat of an encouragement to let's work out what the position is. It's our position, and kind of guide the process from there. So I think enough of us, or probably all of us, were similarly minded
Yes,
in
yes.
that.
After the talking and sort of, it was, and it was this lovely. It was a really nice organic collaboration across the university, which often doesn't happen, right? So it was a good process, a fast process, but a good process.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Just see if we have any hands up, but otherwise we can cover a couple of the chat questions that we've got as well. Yep, so that's right. Yeah, so Erin had put a question into the chat. I'll just read that out for everyone. If you're currently embedding the use of AI ChatGPT in some assignments, are you providing licenses for the learners as they come at a cost? And then how do tutors, markers identify what is AI usage and what isn't, as it can create fake articles and case studies, which it creates legit looking references for too. So I think maybe we talked a bit about the second one, but the first one we haven't done.
Yeah, so that's a good question. At the moment, well, as far as I know, ChatGPT is still free, so students can use it without having to pay money. I think you can pay some extra and get a better version, but I haven't done that yet. I guess it, and I guess that is a question sort of for the future though, because in some ways it kind of levels that equity in terms of, you know, everybody has access to it if you've got access to the internet, which again we know we've got that digital divide, but perhaps you know, some of us have parents who went to university or to higher educational institutions, so we can always check with them, but other people don't. So having ChatGPT to help you with your answers actually in some ways could be seen as a leveling. So what am I trying to say there?
Well, I mean, if the university decided to go down that route,
yes,
it may not necessarily be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If done appropriately, I suppose.
And in an equitable manner. Yeah. Is that question?
And yeah, Karen also has asked the question in the chat. Oh no, sorry, I think it's an observation. Tutors will have ideas about how the students use AI, and we won't necessarily know. Yes.
Yeah, and that's and we have that same issue here too.
Yeah. We're not all on the same walk at times. Sure. Margaret was sharing a practice, I believe. So I've shown students ChatGPT and illustrated how they can ask ChatGPT to prepare a worksheet or multi-choice or short answer test. Wow. And they're studying like first year bachelor nursing cardiovascular. Yeah, right.
That's great.
That's a study aid.
Yeah, that's a great idea actually. Yeah.
Yeah, one of our scenarios, yeah, there's a similar kind of story to it. Yeah. Is there any other questions?
Oh yeah, my daughter was talking about the Grammarly generative AI capacity. Yeah, so we've had to try to turn that off for licenses we were offering to learners so they aren't picked up as AI use. Yeah, so it all becomes quite tricky, I think, with that kind of with having that AI checking tool, you're getting into sort of more difficult areas there as well. I can answer that question, Tanya. Absolutely, you're more than welcome to the slides. Yeah, and thank you, Rowan. Thanks. It was a scramble to get them up, so I'm pleased that they look good in the harsh light of day still. Yeah, that's
Kirsty's comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is much more effective to talk about it and teach people how to use it well and be explicit. Yeah, let's collaborate and find a mutually beneficial way of using these tools. Absolutely. Yeah, it's here. Yeah, got to try and work out how we can use it going forward, really, in a way that doesn't negate learning.
We're doing students a disservice if it's not part of the university experience or the further study experience more broadly. Because as I was saying before, they're already using it in their everyday lives. They'll be using it in their work lives in ways we don't even quite grasp yet.
Yeah,
the plane is still being built as we say.
As we're flying ahead with it. Yeah. Yep. We use in the workplace all the time. Yeah. Any kind of low level kind of content writing. I mean, I'm finding I can use it to write emails for me now. It's fantastic. So.
You were joking about this presentation being by ChatGPT.
Yes. Can you tell if it is or not? Yeah. Yeah, including by tutors writing assessments. Absolutely. Right. It writes a really good presentation outline or program outline.
Course outline.
Course outline. All right, well, I'm just sort of conscious of time. We just have one more, one more slide. It was just some thoughts that we sort of had around how it might shape or change learning advisors' practice going forward. And one of the questions we've been having here is how much should we be picking up? You know, we work with academic literacies and our colleagues work with information literacies. Who's going to pick up the artificial intelligence literacies? Is that something that learning advisors should be doing? We are going to hopefully be looking forward to talk about how we can include using these ethically in workshops, online resources, maybe having a workshop on how to use ChatGPT in a good way to write your thesis at some point going forward. Yeah. So yeah, who picks up those academic artificial intelligence literacies? And should it be us? Talk to the next point. There we go.
Yeah, I think in terms of how we teach the workshops we teach, so we've obviously got the stock general workshops that students self-enroll into about how to write an essay, how to write a report, etc., etc. So perhaps, we need to look at how we include this part of the students' processes, which I'm sure they are engaging in all over the place in different ways. So I think, again, if we're kind of normalizing to a certain extent, that this would be a great way to help you frame up some of your thinking around an issue or give you some sort of head start into the research process. And then saying, then do the following bits and pieces yourself. You're going to have to contribute intellectually to this process. And just giving them some insights on how they can harness, I suppose, make the most of it. So I think that's a good reason to revisit our workshop materials. As we like to.
Yep. And then point number 3, I think I think there needs to be some clarity, and I do like what you're doing in Sunny Nelson with that co-construction, but there needs to be some explicitness for students about how they want students to use or not use AI. Otherwise, it's not fair. I think we're not being clear. We're not providing enough guidance, and so there needs to be some. Institutions need to be explicit about that. And I love that co-construction idea. And then the final point, Dr. Mark Bassett.
I mean, essentially, what are we thinking in terms of our own roles? Just being a little bit, I suppose, self-involved here as learning advisors. What parts of our role might be threatened? I suppose it's a strong word, but are there things that we do that are easily now replaced or not, right? And whatever it is, I think it's good to maybe elicit from ourselves what some of these things might be. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but we usually need to justify our existence. And I think a huge part of that, whether we like it or not, will be around this particular tech and how it gets used, how we can make the best of it. We need to be forward thinking around where we sit in that space. And do we think that Does anyone actually want to comment on any of these questions? We've got 5 more minutes, though, I think. Diana? So institutions need to be explicit about how they want students to use AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think students want to do the right thing, but they just don't know how to do it, right? So we need to provide, it's not fair if we don't provide that guidance.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok myself, but on my Facebook Reels, a video came up of a student who was making, a humorous video about life as a student, stuff we're all really familiar with, but essentially, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I get AI to write? Do I get ChatGPT to write my assignment because I'm busy? So I think most of them really know that that's not okay. They may, there may be a few that are slightly less aware, but yeah, I think where we come in is around, this particular way of using it's okay. As soon as you go here and cross some boundary, it's not okay. And I think that's where it's incumbent on the universities and the institutions and us to make those boundary points really clear to students. Thank you, Ruth.
Yes.
Yeah. Ruth.
Oh no, core GPT, a more scholarly version. That sounds no. But thank you for putting that link in. That sounds interesting.
Have a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been working with a student who's researching ChatGPT's functionalities, a programming student, and Bard's available now too in New Zealand. So that's another tool. Yeah.
And it'll be in Office 365. Is it already there?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it'll be part of our. If you've got that at your institution, it'll be part of your working life. Anytime now.
Anytime soon. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, there we go. Let's all move to Singapore. That might be the solution.
Yeah, I'm yet to speak to it. I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't let it into my world.
I had let it into my world a long time ago, and I'm sure I'm sending much better quality emails these days. Lovely. All right. Well, it is 2 minutes to go. I'm sure you're all keen to have some lunch. So, do we have a closing karakia, Ruth?
We do, and I hope I'm about to share the right window with you. Is that visible? May not be.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I'll start sharing our one.
Here it comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you came after the beginning, just saying Atlands is compiling a kete of resources. So if you have anything to share with us, we'd be most grateful to receive it for our kete. So this is a closing karakia that we share at Toiomai, where I am. So me inoi tātou kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, kia turuki whakataha ai, haumie, ai.
Thanks so much, Ruth. And can I just say thank you, a big thank you to Mark and Kate. That's certainly very timely, isn't it? Who knows? Who knows where we're going? Definitely building the plane as we fly it. But really, really impressed with how far you've come. And I totally agree that it needs to come from the institutions. I think there's real trouble for us as learning advisors if the different tutors have different expectations for students. that can be very confusing, even within the same program. So I think it's going to be very important for the institutions to decide where they sit on this. But thank you so much. It's been a fabulous session.
Yay, thank you. Thanks for inviting us. I hope everybody has a lovely rest of Friday. Yeah.
Erin, do we know what the next session will be?
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
I always do that. Sorry, yes, it's up on the Atlan's site already. We don't have a link to it yet, but there's a description up there as well. And please, actually, while I've got the microphone on, if anyone has any requests for further sessions, please let us know, because you know, we need your ideas. We want to know what you're interested in. So let us know. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks. See you later.
See ya.